A throw by Merton. It is a collision at the plate. And Pierzynski not only bangs into Barrett, bangs onto the plate, and here they go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this episode of the Crosstown Baseball Podcast. I'm Kevin Sullivan, and alongside me is my good friend here, Matt Cannon. We have a very exciting episode for you this week, and we are going to start it off with the White Sox this week as we flip back and forth each episode. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt to give a weekly recap of what the Southsiders have been doing.
Okay, so this week for the White Sox, some good, some bad. You know, as I always say, could be worse. Number one, we were swept by the Orioles, and that was sad, especially after the sweep of the Blue Jays. But then we split the series with Kansas City in Kansas City, which honestly, the White Sox have been so bad there historically. A split is pretty much the best case scenario for them. So I will certainly take it. Some good pitching, even the losses. I mean, we lost like 2-0. Both times we lost, I believe. So like, you know, again, these losses that are happening are not these blowout losses that we were maybe seeing in the first couple series of the season. So like, there is been some improvements, and so you know, I'll take it, and I know a lot of White Sox fans will too. The exciting news is that we are calling up our number 2 pitching prospect, Noah Schultz from AAA. Who is going to be a much needed boost in that rotation. His AAA numbers have looked pretty good. This has been a long time coming, kind of along with him and Hagen Smith. You know, we've watched these guys grow. The White Sox, of course, have a pretty good recent history of developing left-handed starting pitchers. Who are now all in the AL East. So ironic.
No,
Seiya is not in the AL East anymore, but all of them have success in the AL East. Rodon, Sale, and now Garrett Crochet, who is like absolutely unbelievable again this season so far.
He got lit up last night, I think.
Yeah. Oh, well, okay. It makes me feel a little better. No, I still, of course. Noah Schultz, as of this recording, makes his start tonight. So by the time you're listening to this, he will have started already. And we're going to hope it's a great first outing for a starting pitcher.
He's also I just want to throw this out there. He's also a Chicagoland native coming from Oswego, which is pretty cool. And he's a big guy. He's like 6'10".
Yeah. He's like, I'm excited to like go see him in person at some point, because you don't really know how big these guys are until you see them on the field. But yeah, so I mean, like very, very Chris Sale type of, you know, delivery and body style and everything. So I'm hoping it's a good outing, and I'm hoping that it's worth bringing him up this early. I have liked Chris Getz's aggressiveness so far this season. I think he has like plugged some holes really quickly. I don't think like the Rick Hahn era, I don't think you would have seen Noah Schultz up this early. Mm-hmm. I think you would have waited until midway in the season. I think, you know, but there is clearly a need for another starting pitcher right now. And so let's use the starting pitcher that seems major league ready. So
they already sent down their opening day starter, Shane Smith.
And again, I don't think Rick Hahn would have done that. I think Rick Hahn would have like had him ride it out a little longer. But so far I'm enjoying the aggressiveness. There's a rumor that our outfield prospect Sam Anatochi will possibly be coming soon. There was like reports that he was coming, and then reports that he wasn't coming. The funniest thing I saw was that the White Sox like to do these social media posts about like telling these first time major leaguers like that they're getting called up to the big leagues, and they hadn't done that for him. So like, the funniest rumor that I saw, and I have no idea if it's true, but I could totally believe it if it was, is that they hadn't recorded that. And so they decided not to call him up until they can actually surprise him. I don't think that's really true, but I could it's in the realm of possibility. There's a non-zero chance of it.
It's the White Sox. I love how we're basing this off of off of social media posts that haven't been
Yeah,
recorded yet.
yeah, it's the White Sox, and also like they're pretty desperate for an outfielder right now. So it's really just a matter of time. Um, and they now have a roster spot open because as of yesterday, Lenyn Sosa, our 2025 home run leader, has been traded to the Blue Jays. And there are Sox fans that were very surprised by this. I was surprised. I am not upset by it. Sosa is a good player in terms of he has power. He can, have some consistency at the plate. He does not have a set infield position. He is not good. He's not a good infielder at any of his positions. So he's been a DH a lot, and we've plugged him in where we need him. I think opening up this roster spot, whether it be for, an outfielder at some point in the near future or not, like this is fine. And it's the type of move that the Sox should be making to open up these spots. Sosa has been with us for a number of years. We know what he's doing. The Blue Jays could use him more than we can. And we got an outfield prospect, and then it looks like a player to be named later, or cash. Knowing Jerry, it will be cash at some point.
Probably. That makes sense. Hopefully for the White Sox sake, it doesn't work out like that other time they traded a Sosa away.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, I'm sad to see him go, but I honestly understand it. And I think the Blue Jays will get a little bit more pop in their infield now. I hope he can improve his defense a little bit. But, because he plays all four infield positions, but none of them particularly well.
And you said he plays outfield too a little bit, or no?
I don't believe he has done outfield. He's been strictly an infielder.
Got it.
And if he was able to play outfield even at all, the White Sox would have plugged him in at some point.
That's probably true.
But no, he's played third, short, second, and even first base for us. So best of luck to him in Toronto. And, we will miss him, but I understand it. Another couple things. Reliever Chris Murphy's been placed on the IL. He has not been good so far, so it's not really a big loss. I kind of hoping this IL stint will maybe get him back on track and give him a little bit of a breather. And then I know we talked about it a little bit last week, but Grant Taylor is continued to be used as an opener. And so far, it's even on games we've lost, it's kind of worked. And I think, remember, we joked about like he could technically start 50 games this season. It's not out of the realm of possibility, it seems like. Again, the only downside is that we lose him at the back of the bullpen when he's kind of one of our best arms as like a good setup man. So it's super interesting, and so far it's working, and I think they're gonna keep doing it, truthfully. But what are your thoughts about, like, I know like openers are a relatively new thing, like in the last 10 to 15 years, but like an opener to be used this much by the same pitcher is a very new concept.
I agree. I think it makes a lot of sense for the White Sox, given where they're at with the roster as a whole. They have a very young rotation, not a lot of established veterans really. And when it makes sense to me because, right off the bat in the first, second, third innings, you're gonna face the heart of the order. So you're pretty much moving that from later in the game to earlier in the game. I like it. The Cubs haven't really done that yet this year, but I'm sure they will, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, especially given some of their struggles to start the season and injuries as well. I like it personally. It's definitely a new age thing in baseball. I think Joe Madden was pretty instrumental in getting that going, along with a few other managers.
Because it was Tampa that started it, right? And was he the manager at the time when that was?
I believe so. Yeah, because he brought that concept to the Cubs, and they used it a lot when he was the manager. They've definitely used it periodically with David Ross and Craig Counsell since then. Just not so far yet this season, but I definitely could see it happening, especially while they're waiting for Justin Steele and Matt Boyd to come back here.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's super interesting, and if it's successful, I would not be surprised to see more teams kind of designate an opener like position for a pitcher or two, and you
Hmm.
would see them at least a couple times a week. So it's it's interesting, and it kind of keeps it exciting a little bit to watch the games. But that's really it for the Sox this week. Again, some good, some bad. I have my fingers crossed about Noah Schultz tonight. I will actually be able to watch the game tonight, so I will be watching with great interest. But let's hear about the Northsiders.
Yeah, definitely. Appreciate that. Before we get to that really quickly, I think the White Sox have lost like 10 straight at home to the Baltimore Orioles get after this series. Have you seen that?
I did not see it, but it does not surprise me at all. In fact, I think I was at one of those games last year. Um, yeah, they're even though they're an underperforming team, they're still a good team. You know, we have to keep in mind like an underperforming team in the AL East is still better than most AL Central teams. So, uh, they have some good people there. Um, but yeah, let's maybe 2026 we'll finally be able to get a win, or 2027, excuse me, we'll finally be able to get a win at home with them.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think they're done coming to the
Yes, I
South
believe
side at
so.
least. Yep. Maybe next year, as we always
Maybe
say here in
next year.
Chicago. Awesome. Well, thanks for that report, Matt. Appreciate it. So now we'll move on to the Cubs here and their weekly recap. Biggest news probably coming out of this past week is that Seiya Suzuki has returned to the lineup. He is definitely getting his timing, you can tell. He's hitting like 150 something, I think, as of this recording. He's kind of swinging at everything, but it is really good to have him back in the field mostly, because I cannot watch Matt Shaw play right field for very long. He's a decent infielder. He is not a good outfielder, and I understand it's a new position to him, and he's kind of learning on the fly when it comes to that. But last night, again, he misjudged a fly ball that cost the Cubs some runs. He has no arm whatsoever. He cannot throw a runner out. So
This is
I
it's reminding me of when the Sox tried Andrew Vaughn in the outfield because out of necessity. And yeah, it's teams get outfielders to play the outfield, please and thank you.
right, right. You need people who can actually throw the ball and have arm strength out there. And Matt Shaw is just not it. But it is great to see Seiya Suzuki back out there. It definitely lengthens the lineup a little bit. Craig Counsell seems to still be playing around with the order. It seems like every day it's a new lineup and a different order. So the Cubs are still trying to hit their stride in on offense. Other big news coming out of this past week, Cade Horton, as we kind of alluded to in our last episode, unfortunately was officially diagnosed with I think a torn UCL, which is the ulnar collateral ligament in your elbow. So he is going to likely need Tommy John surgery, which means he is done for the entirety of the 2026 season. Very eerie and very similar to Justin Steele's injury around the same time last year. So once again, the Cubs are stuck without one of their key starting pitchers for the season. Steele still has a little bit more in his rehab, probably returns late May, early June, as we've said previously. So that's pretty disappointing. Definitely has an effect on the Cubs' playoff chances, and I would say, World Series chances. I still think that they should go after Lucas Giolito, former White Sox pitcher, who is just sitting out there. Nobody has signed
Still,
him.
I just saw a report, I think yesterday, that he's still doing a throwing program and waiting for teams to call. And I with all the injuries around the league to Cubs, Sox, and everyone else, I cannot believe he's still out there.
It makes no sense, and I really think he would fit in well with this team. You sign him to like a 1 or 2 year deal. You have more depth, even when Justin Steele and Cade Horton return. I don't know if you can necessarily count on Javier Assad and Colin Ray long term. Javier Assad got absolutely lit up on Monday against the Phillies. Kyle Schwarber went off twice in that game. So he loves playing the Cubs. I feel like he just tees off on them every time. I think he's still pissed about getting non-tendered after the 2020 season, which
He's
I
on my
don't really
fantasy
blame
team
him.
this year, so I'm loving it.
Easily the worst move that the Theo Epstein regime made was non-tendering him. I know they really had no choice because they had like no revenue come in 2020 because of the pandemic, but he's probably the best one of that group. I mean, easily.
You and I talked about this. He's the only one of that group, and he was young in 2016, so it makes sense that he's still playing. But like, he's really the only one that has had a great career and a greater career since he left the Cubs.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that's true. A few guys had like little blips where like I know Jorge Soler had a really good season after he left the Cubs, but he's pretty average now. Still in the league, but pretty average.
We're gonna
And
get to
then
him.
yeah, yeah, that's true. We will get to him. Oh God. He's had an eventful week too. We'll get to that later. So Cade Horton done for the season. As of last night or Monday, I should say, on the broadcast, they said that Matt Boyd is preparing to go out on a rehab assignment. They are aiming for him to start next Tuesday. So he should be back in the rotation soon. That is a big return. They definitely need him right now because, man, the Cubs are struggling in like every facet. The pitching is struggling, the offense is struggling, even the defense is struggling a little bit. So yeah, they need him to return very badly. Speaking of the offense, I think the offense struggling really centers around three guys. Pete Crow Armstrong, he seems to be swinging at everything, and it kind of looks like he's pressing a little bit, maybe because of that big contract extension that he just received. I think personally that Craig Counsell should sit him for a day or two and let him reset. He keeps throwing him out there, and I totally understand that he has, he's a Gold Glover. He plays elite defense, but his bat, I mean, it's basically an automatic out right now. He just isn't hitting anything. Last night against the Phillies or on Monday, he was going up against a lefty, and like this guy was making him look silly out there, just working him inside, and he was just swinging at everything. So PCA might need a day or two off, which brings me to my next struggling offensive player is Michael Bush. He just broke an 0 for 30 streak here at the beginning of the season.
Really?
Yeah, he broke that on Sunday, and the Cubs come back win, which I'll get to here in a second. So he's also been sitting out a little bit and kind of resetting. He was arguably the Cubs' most consistent player last season. So him not contributing has been a big letdown so far. Obviously, it's very early. We're only like 2 weeks into the season. But he needs to step it up as well. And then longtime Cub, actually the longest tenured Cub slash Chicago athlete currently, Ian Happ, who is in his walk year of free agency. He got off to a decent start. He hit 4 home runs like pretty quickly. But ever since he's also really not hitting much, kind of swinging at everything. Again, he's a Gold Glover. He plays elite defense out there, so I'm sure it's tough to sit him. But I think, you want to get these guys a break when they're struggling early in the season than rather than later in the season, in my opinion, when the games arguably count more. I mean, every game counts, but I think you can afford to let him sit a day or two here in the beginning of the season. So PCA, Bush, and Hap they really got to step it up here if the Cubs want to turn this thing around because they're just looking not great here to start the season. I believe they are still in last place in the Central. But luckily, the Central is pretty tight right now. I think they're only like 3 games back or so. So they obviously have a chance to turn it around. Let's see really quickly. I'm just going to pull up the standings here just out of my own curiosity. Let's see. Right now, well, the White Sox are in last. Just got to mention
Well,
that really
that's
quickly.
not surprising.
Yeah.
Actually, it's a little
But
surprising because they've been okay in the last week or so, but
Mm-hmm.
it's fine. It's fine, Kevin. It's fine.
It's fine. It's fine. You just keep saying it's fine and it'll be
It's
fine.
fine.
But the Cubs are also in last, the only team in the Central currently under 500. They are 3 games back of the division leading Pirates, surprisingly. That prediction of mine that Paul Skeens is going to pitch in a postseason game is starting to look better and better every week. So maybe I was onto something there. But yeah, so the Cubs, they need some more offensive output and hopefully get Matt Boyd back and eventually Justin Steele back to turn things around here. The highlight of this past week was this past Sunday. They had a big comeback win against the Pirates. They had lost the first 2 games of the series, and I happened to be at this game on Sunday, so I can speak to it pretty personally here. It was a great game. Well, at least at the end, it was great. It wasn't so great the first like 4 or 5 innings because they were down 6-2 at one point. Jamison Tyone, who had been pretty decent so far this season, definitely struggled at the beginning of the game there, but they came back, turned it around. They got a couple calls to go their way. There was definitely a check swing on, I think Brandon Lau is his name, and he did not go around. Or he definitely held up, but they called him out on that. So thank you to whoever the third base umpire was
Or
on that one.
was it CB Buckner?
It wouldn't surprise me. I don't believe it was, but it wouldn't surprise me either if it was. I'm not sure who it was, but yeah, he actually hit 2 home runs in that game prior to that at bat. So that was a really big one for the Cubs. Dansby Swanson had a really heads up play, scored on a little blooper into the outfield that he probably shouldn't have scored on, but he was paying attention, and that was a really key moment. I think that was to tie the game. So that was arguably one of the more exciting Cubs games I've been to recently. And, it's just really, really one of those statement wins on the season. I'm sure when they do the highlight reel of this season, I guarantee that game will be on there because it was a really big win. And, you just felt the energy shifting in the stadium throughout those last few innings. And then well, it was a highlight, then it turned into a low light this past week was Shota Imanaga, and his start went 6 no-hit innings, and then the Cubs lost the game. So not surprising. I think he was pretty close to 100 pitches. You see a lot of that more in today's game of not letting guys go super
Well,
long.
especially early in the season too, right?
Exactly. And he's also been one that last year was kind of a down season for him. He struggled a bit, and it may have been due to being overworked. So I definitely think you wanna play it cautiously with him. I wasn't surprised. It was unfortunate that the bullpen couldn't hold it for him, and the offense really, again, didn't do much. So, you know, pretty disappointing.
Well, the one
This week,
positive is that hopefully he continues to be that good and give you 6 good innings every game. Not no hit
yeah.
innings. That's unreasonable to ask, but if he had a down year last year, hopefully he can turn it around.
Yeah, let's hope so. He's looked good at times, but he definitely is a bit up and down. So, and I think as long as you can get 6 innings consistently out of a starting pitcher, I think that's really all you can ask for in today's game. Over the next week here, the Cubs, right now they're in Philadelphia. They got destroyed on Monday, playing with a score of 13-7. So they'll finish up that series in Philly here. Then they come home for a little homestand against the Mets and the Phillies again. So they're going to see the Phillies twice here in a week.
Wow.
Uh,
Well, good luck.
yeah, the Cubs definitely enter the tough stretch of their schedule now, and which is not great because they haven't played well against, average to subpar teams so far. And now, they play the Phillies, the Mets, the Phillies again, and then the Dodgers and Padres to close out the month. So that it could not be a great stretch here. I'm not necessarily looking forward to that. And just really quickly, let's see who the White Sox are playing really quick. I know we
They
didn't
are
get to that.
playing. They have a home series against the Rays this week, and then they will actually fly out to Sacramento to take on the A's, the no-name A's.
The no-name A's, yes, playing in a minor league ballpark. And then it looks like they go to Arizona after that.
Yeah,
So
so we got some West Coast games coming up. So some late night
mhm.
baseball here in Chicago.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, the White
So,
Sox have a bit of an easier schedule, I would say.
yeah, I mean the A's and Diamondbacks and Rays, aren't like, I mean, the Rays are pretty good, but the A's and Diamondbacks, they're not horrible, but they're not the Phillies. So
Right. And then they
uh
get a little bit of some opponents that the Cubs have already faced. They come home against the Nationals and the Angels to close out the month.
yeah, I actually did forget one very important piece of White Sox news, Kevin. In
Yes.
that, and I if you are interested in going to any Sox game this year besides Crosstown, I think you're gonna want to go on Tuesday, August 11th against the Reds, because every single person in that stadium will be getting a White Sox themed Pope hat.
That's an amazing giveaway. I just have to say
Well,
that.
and they know it's amazing because I think it was going to be like the first like 15 or 20,000 fans originally, and then they announced, okay, we see what's going to happen if that's the case. Everyone's just going to get one now.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. It's still like, I grew up Jewish, but I married a Catholic, and my wife is like she's super impressed that the Pope is a Sox fan. She looked at this giveaway and she's like, it's great. It's almost sacrilegious, but it's hysterical.
Almost. It's like right
Almost.
on the border
Like
there.
right on the cusp of being sacrilegious, but it's great. Um,
Yeah.
so I love that they're embracing it. It's fun. You see videos of Pope Leo like all the time. Like, if someone yells "Go White Sox" to him, he'll like give a thumbs up. It's we're in new uncharted territory here. Who would have ever thought that we'd have a baseball fan Pope, but like let alone a White Sox fan who was at the World Series. It's crazy.
That is, well, the White
But
Sox
anyway,
need a divine
I just
intervention
wanted
to
to
get a
bring
World
that up,
Series.
and I will be going to that game for sure, and we'll wear that hat on the next episode. On
Yes.
the next episode after that game.
Yes, absolutely. No, that sounds like a great giveaway. I think that's really cool, honestly. You mean you don't want to go April 24th when they're giving away a Miguel Vargas bobblehead?
You know, I think I'm okay.
That's so random. Well, like
Uh,
why Miguel Vargas?
yeah, because they need some players. I don't know, and they can't do Frank Thomas right now.
Yeah, they don't want to get sued again.
Exactly.
Awesome. Okay, well, that'll do it for the White Sox and the Cubs for their recaps for the past week. So now we turn our attention to MLB, which our first point on that one, it involves a former Cub and I believe a former White Sox,
Oh
right?
yeah, longtime White Sox.
Yeah, that's right. So last week, the Braves and Angels got into a bench clearing brawl, which was instigated by Jorge Soler, former Cub, and Ronaldo Lopez, former White Sox. They really went at it. It was a good brawl.
I had to like see the non-broadcast version because like the broadcast kind of, I think they were following the play at first base, and so like they didn't show like the very beginning of the brawl, and then later I saw like the first initial punches. Like, oh my god, that is like one of the more intense starts of a brawl I have seen in a long time.
Mhm.
Um, I haven't watched the John Boy breakdown yet. I look forward to because I want to hear the lip reading and everything, but like they went at it.
Yeah,
Um, and then yeah, they were both suspended 6 games, which you know for a position player means a lot more than a starting pitcher.
right.
So I don't know, it's kind of interesting because like Lopez essentially misses one start, if any, and then Soler misses a whole 6 games.
hmm And I believe they both appealed as well. So I'm
Mhm.
sure those will both be reduced to 5 games ultimately. I thought it was
Lopez might
interesting.
not miss any games then.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they'll probably just move his start back a day or something.
Right.
Yeah. During that brawl, I did think it was funny that Jorge Soler got tackled by Braves manager Walt Weiss. I don't think I've
That's
ever seen a manager tackle a
yeah,
player.
yeah. Like I don't know, that was an intense one. That was
Yeah.
one of the bigger ones we've seen in quite a while. It feels like.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And they were teammates on the Braves, so they kind of know each other, Walt Weiss and
Oh, I
Jorge
didn't
Soler, so
remember
that might be
that.
part of it too.
I did not remember that. And yeah, that maybe clearly maybe some bad blood from their time as teammates then.
Maybe, maybe. I mean, Jorge Soler is a big dude. Like
Yeah,
if he grew up here in America, I honestly think he would have been a football player more so than a baseball player because he's built like a linebacker.
I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so we have a good brawl to start the season. Hopefully we get a few more. I mean, I love a good bench clearing brawl. I want to be at one once. Have you ever been at a game where there was one?
I think I was at one where the benches emptied, but there was no punches thrown. And I think
Okay.
it was White Sox versus like Nationals or Royals or so. I don't remember exactly, but it was. I remember I got really excited, and then it just kind of, you know, amounted to nothing.
Yeah, that's
Like
no fun when
I
they
don't even know if the bullpens ended up clearing out.
right. That's no fun when they just like go onto the field and then just like stand there.
Yeah,
That's no fun.
no,
Gotta have some fisticuffs.
yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, so we had our first brawl of the season. Jordan Walker of the St. Louis Cardinals, unfortunately, as a Cubs fan, is having a very hot start to the season. He was a pretty highly touted prospect. His first season, he did pretty well. He had like 20 something homers and like almost 60 RBI. The past two seasons, he has, you know, he experienced a bit of a regression, it seems like. I don't know what's changed. Maybe a change in approach, maybe a change in coaching. I have no idea. But he is off to a very hot start. As of this recording, he is currently batting 333 with 8 homers, 15 RBI, and an OPS of 1161, which
That's
is
that's the stat right there.
yeah, like he's tearing the cover off the ball right now. I actually had to update this before we started recording because he hit another home run last night.
Wow.
Yeah, so he's having a great start to the season. Definitely a bright spot for the Cardinals, who are in a bit of a rebuilding mode, I would say, at this time. They traded away Wilson Contreras and Brendan Donovan this past offseason, and Nolan Arenado, right? That was this past offseason.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So they're in a rebuild technically, which you really don't see from the Cardinals too often. But obviously, Jordan Walker might be a guy that they can build around potentially. I
And
assume,
this seemed to always happen to the Cardinals that like even when they'd have a down year, they'd have like one guy come out and you know be a super productive player, and then yeah, they don't have several rebuilding years. I know they haven't. This is probably the worst stretch of seasons for them in our lifetime, probably.
mhm. Yeah.
Um, but I don't see them staying at the bottom that much longer.
No, I mean, it's the Cardinals. I'm sure they'll turn it around relatively quickly compared to most teams. So yeah, it's good for them. They definitely have a big bat in the middle of their order, and he's dangerous right now. We'll have to see if it's sustainable and if this continues all season long. I do think there's a little bit of a World Series or not World Baseball Classic hangover going on, both with the Cubs and White Sox. Our next person here that we're going to talk about, Edwin Diaz, who
Hmm.
was the closer for the Dominican Republic. I was reading about this yesterday. It looks like his velocity is down a little bit, and he's been getting lit up a bit for the Dodgers, who he signed with this past offseason.
For a
I
lot of
honestly,
money.
yeah, he got a lot of money to go to Los Angeles. I do think the WBC might be having an effect on some of these guys. I see it with the Cubs. PCA is not really hitting. Bregman really isn't hitting. Javier Assad got lit up last night. He was on Team Mexico. Tyone got kind of lit up on Sunday. Uh, you know,
Tommy
I,
slowed down since the first week of the season.
Yeah, I think it has something to do with these guys not getting as many at bats or innings pitching as they normally would. Like PCA was not always the starter for Team USA. They put Byron Buxton out there a lot. So I think what we're seeing is almost like an extended spring training for some of these guys where they're still trying to find their groove and be productive. So Edwin Diaz seems to be struggling a little bit for the Dodgers. Christian Yelich, the 2018 NL MVP, pulled a hamstring the other day for the Milwaukee Brewers. Looks like he will miss some time here. He has had a big drop off over the past 2 years. He is definitely not the MVP caliber player that he was. But still, he can be productive at times, I would say. But that's a big loss for the
Yeah,
Brewers here early
it's
this
still a
season.
big loss, even if he's, he had a walk-off home run against the Sox in the opening series. It's he can still be very productive, but yeah, when he made the transition from Miami to Milwaukee, I mean, he that was one of the. I mean, he put together a couple incredible seasons,
Yeah,
and I believe he signed the biggest contract the Brewers have ever handed out.
I believe
And
so.
um, but yeah, so it's still a big loss for them, especially with with everything kind of going right for the Brewers, and they'll be okay most likely, but they don't have they're not the Dodgers where they have superstars on every corner. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They do need everything to go right for them, and so far everything has been going right for them. But
hmm
so we'll see if they can recover from this.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting to see. Could you imagine how good the Marlins would have been if they didn't break up that core? I mean, they had
Oh,
an
I mean,
outfield. They had an outfield of Marcell Ozuna, Christian Yelich, and Giancarlo Stanton, and they had some
yeah,
other big names too.
yeah. I mean, and I know, unfortunately, I know it's like, Jose Fernandez when he passed away, like that was kind of a big, you know, loss in terms of both, of course, like emotionally for the team, but also like talent wise for the team.
Yeah,
Um, it's a big what if because the Marlins, yeah, that could have been an incredible team, and I really feel bad for Marlins fans because I mean, listen, as a Sox fan, you think like, oh, we could have had Fernando Tatis Jr., we could have had this, we could have had that, we could have had that, but like we never had all those people actually play on the same team, whereas like the
they
Marlins
did.
did have that,
Yeah,
and they just didn't wait for them to develop into the players they ended up becoming.
yeah. It is a shame. I think they missed a window there, unfortunately, and the death of Jose Fernandez definitely had an impact on that, I would say.
Absolutely.
Um, turning back to the Blue Jays, who we talked about earlier, acquiring Lenyn Sosa from the White Sox. They called up another former White Sox and Cub, actually. Eloy Jimenez has resurfaced, and he has been called up by the Blue Jays. I believe he's going to be replacing George Springer, who broke a toe on a foul ball the other day. Obviously, Eloy Jimenez, not quite the same caliber player as George Springer, especially on defense. But maybe he can regain some of his hitting a little bit. He's had a very interesting career arc. I mean, he was supposed to be a top prospect when he was with the Cubs. That's why he was traded to the White Sox in the Jose Quintana trade, and that also sent Dylan Cease to the White Sox, who's also on the Blue Jays. All these former White Sox keep ending up on the Blue Jays.
It's true. And yeah, I listen. I wish Eloy nothing but the best. He is, and I think I said this in even our first episode. I think out of that core, he is the biggest disappointment for me, more so than Moncada, more so than Robert, more so than Anderson, because Eloy was supposed to be this, you know, superstar, and he showed flashes of brilliance in his first season, and injuries have just kept him down. And then when he's healthy, he's still kind of unproductive. So he has a lot to prove. The Blue Jays have World Series ambitions, so they are not going to have a long leash for him. So he's got to kind of prove himself pretty quickly. So I look forward to seeing if he can do it.
Yeah, speaking of Luis Robert, he's getting off to a pretty good start for the Mets here. He's hitting 300, only two homers and seven RBI, but he's got an OPS of 855. That's pretty
Yes,
good.
and the main guy we got for him, Acuna, has been not super great. So that's fun. That's really always fun to see, especially because we're pretty desperate for outfielders right now. So Luis Robert would be a big help in that center field position for the Sox right now. But good for him for making the most of his Mets situation. Hopefully he can keep it up.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Always good to see a player succeed eventually, even if it's not with our team. But we wish it was for our
Mostly,
team.
yeah.
And then lastly, around MLB, we just want to take a second to acknowledge that Phil Garner, the former manager of the 2005 Houston Astros, who were swept by the White Sox in that World Series, and he was a member of the 1979 World Series as a player with the Pirates. Unfortunately, passed away this past week. So we want to send our condolences to his family and friends. What I remember of him, he was a pretty good manager. Those Astros teams were pretty dangerous, and that was back when they were in the NL Central with the Cubs. So the Cubs saw them a lot more back then. Definitely a baseball lifer type of guy. Obviously he got, the Astros to the World Series. He did get a ring with the Pirates. So, he had a pretty solid career. Really sad to see that he passed away, unfortunately, this past week. But what are your memories of him from that World Series?
Well, I remember, I mean, like, it's funny, like, I always said that, and a lot of people have said, like, even though the Sox swept the Astros, each of those games could have gone the other way. And Garner, managed as best he could, especially like, Roger Clemens was injured in the first couple innings of game one, and then he had to bring in, I think it was Wandy Rodriguez. So, like, your long reliever. And, the Astros outside of game four, where it was a 1-0 win for the Sox, they were up every single game at one point.
Hmm.
And Garner managed his veterans really well. I remember Jeff Bagwell was like regulated to DH duty, only, so he couldn't play at the home games outside of pinch hitting. And so like he was a really good manager, and I remember those Astros teams. I mean they were almost in the World Series in 2004 as well. You remember,
Yeah.
Pujols big or no, that was 2005 that Pujols hit that huge go ahead home run, but the Astros still won that series. But they were really good for a few years there, and Garner was a big part of that. So yes, when I heard he passed away, I immediately knew, immediately remembered who he was.
Hmm.
And that was, out of all the World Series that were 4-game sweeps, that one I still say was the most competitive 4-game sweep I've ever seen.
Yeah,
So, and that says a lot about his managing style.
definitely. Yeah, that was right at the height of the Killer Bee era.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Berkman, Bagwell, and Biggio, they were dangerous.
Oh
They
yeah.
had a good lineup.
Yeah.
And
And they had Clemens, who, was still so good at
yeah,
that point. They had I think they still had
Pettit.
Roy Oswalt, Andy Pettit, just the powerhouse of pitching and hitting. And that that team in a lot of other circumstances would have won a World Series.
You do have to wonder, you mentioned that Bagwell was relegated to DH duty. You have to wonder how that series would have played out if it was today with the universal DH and he could play in every game. Um,
Absolutely, because I
yeah.
I think that would have been a big difference, honestly.
Yeah, probably. So yes, Phil Garner passed away. Again, we send our condolences to his family and friends. So that'll do it for our wrap up of Around the League. So now we will turn to our baseball at the movies segment, and we are very excited for this one, me in particular, because it involves my team, the Cubs. So this week's movie is Rookie of the Year, which was released in 1993. Stars Thomas Ian Nicholas as Henry Rowan Gary Busey as Chet Steadman, Amy Morton as Mary Rowan and Daniel Stern as Coach Brickma. Daniel Stern, this was actually the only movie he ever directed, which I found interesting. And if you don't know who Daniel Stern is, if you've ever seen Home Alone 1 and 2, he is Marv, who is the taller of the two burglars, basically. The one who gets the spider on his face in Home Alone 1. Um, the IMDb summary of this movie: when an accident miraculously gives a boy an incredibly powerful pitching arm, he becomes a major league pitcher for the Chicago Cubs. And I also thought it was really cool that John Candy has an uncredited cameo in this movie where he plays the radio voice of the Chicago Cubs in this movie. Obviously, this is a movie I really enjoyed growing up, and largely that is because it involves the Cubs. I watched this movie again before we recorded this episode. It's a good movie. I won't say it's amazing. It's not the most well written. Um,
There's a lot of leaps to be
a lot
had.
of leaps. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of leaps. For some reason, Henry, when he's playing Little League, is like the only one wearing blue jeans, which I thought was weird. I still don't understand that. But no, it's an entertaining movie for kids for sure. I think I need to revise my rating of Little Big League based on this movie.
I was gonna say the same thing because when we were doing Little Big League, I was like, I think out of like the three like kid-based movies in the 90s, that was my least favorite of them. I actually think I like Little Big League a little better
I would
after
say
having
four.
watched.
I would say there were four kids baseball movies, to be fair.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Because are you thinking Angels in the Outfield as well, or
Yeah, yeah,
yeah? So
yeah.
yeah, this one is the least. It's the least realistic, and of course it is because it's a pure fantasy, and that's
Right,
totally fine.
right.
But yeah, the I was surprised with some of the writing and some of the moments. I was like, oh wow, that moment hits differently than I remember.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not the most well-written movie. The plot, is a bit far-fetched, but I do believe that's the point. I think I gave Little Big League a 4.25 Italian beefs. I feel like I need to move that down to like 3.75 Italian beefs, and then give this one arguably like the same rating, if not maybe a little bit higher, just because it was the Cubs. But that's a personal bias, I would say. But I would say they're about the same. It is ironic, like, and I know we've talked about this before, that movies do, studios do this all the time, where one will release a movie and then another will release a very similar movie. You
Mm-hmm.
know, in Little Big League, you have the kid becomes the manager. In this movie, you have the kid becomes a pitcher for the team. Even like the cast looks similar. The main character is like a young man with dark hair. He has a
Yeah.
blonde friend and he has a dark-haired friend. Like the movies were cast very similarly too.
Little Big League was first, right? And this was 2 years later.
No, this one was first,
Oh
actually.
wow. Okay.
Yeah. So Rookie of the Year came out in 1993. Little Big League came out in 1994.
Oh wow. So pretty soon. I mean, yeah.
I mean, they arguably could have been filmed around the same time for all we know, but their release dates were a little bit different. So, it's like I want to say it's a really good movie, but like it's just not as an adult.
It's very fun, and you're
Yeah.
right. And like even like listen, it's not a Cubs fans, but as someone who is living in Lakeview for 3 years, it was really fun to see Wrigley and that whole area as it was in the 90s. It was I like the filmmaking a lot. I mean, they're at Wrigley Field. They are filming at Wrigley with a full crowd, like no CGI. It felt very authentic, and that's in a way that's just not really done anymore. Um, I love the scene where he first enters Wrigley, where it's the parody of Wizard of Oz. The horse of a different color, but it's through the Cubs logo.
Yeah.
I think that I thought that was brilliant. Um, I yeah, it's a silly movie. I had no idea Daniel Stern directed this until rewatching it. He also has a really good recurring role on For All Mankind, the Apple TV show right now. He also has some legal problems, so we chose two Timothy Busfield movies and now a Daniel Stern movie, so that's fun.
I think every movie we do, we're gonna have someone
But
who has a legal issue.
very recent legal troubles, I believe, like around the
Yeah.
same time as Busfield, which is hysterical.
Yeah.
Uh, no, I mean this was always a favorite, and yeah, I mean growing up in Chicago, it's like it's a Cubs based movie. Now, what's so funny is like, you know, like the idea of the Cubs having attendance issues to that extent, like, and I asked my dad, who of course was around in that time, and he said that wasn't uh that was pretty close to reality sometimes. Like the Cubs were not always this like tourist draw that they are now,
Right.
that like even on really bad seasons they're going to sell out Wrigley Field. And yeah, the idea of like a cheap owner using a gimmick to get sellouts. I mean, that's aged pretty well. Um,
That's baseball.
yeah, there's a scene in I love seeing Wrigley like with the very minimal ads. And I know we're going to talk about this movie at some point, but there's a scene in Major League Two where Roger Dorn is the owner of the team, and the players walk out and they see the outfield covered in ads, and
Yeah,
that's a joke. And now that looks tame
right.
compared to every major league stadium. So seeing Wrigley in like all of its like plain brick wall glory for this movie was like really nice and like comforting.
Yeah,
Um, I think Gary Busey is good in it. I want to point out that I what one thing I love about this movie is the score. It's a score by Bill Conti, who is famous for the Rocky movies, and he also
mm,
did a Bond movie, For Your Eyes Only, which is a great one. I A lot of these 90s movies have really memorable, beautiful scores, and this one's no exception. This could have just easily been a nothing score movie, and it elevates the movie really well. I think John Candy is really funny. And I find it funny that he's uncredited. That happens sometimes. I remember watching one of the Star Trek movies, and Whoopi Goldberg is like in it as a big role, and she's uncredited. If you're a big star at the time and you're not like the leading star, sometimes you'll just do it uncredited. I'm not really sure why, but whatever.
I
Um,
read that it was because John Candy was not originally cast in the movie. That's why he wasn't credited.
Interesting. I wonder
Yeah,
who the original cast was there. Because you a radio announcer like in a baseball movie, it's like Bob Uecker sets the standard, so it's a very important role.
right,
I Yeah, so yes, this was a very fun movie. It's very stupid. Henry doesn't go to the minor leagues at all to like pitch a single game. He goes right to the big leagues. Child labor laws do not exist. Um, you know, he does he even like warm up before taking his first pitch in the big leagues? I think maybe he was in the bullpen, but you don't
yeah.
actually see him throw a pitch. Um, I just and like the scene where he first goes in and like the Mets player is so like evil that he's like literally like saying like where's your mama sitting, like
Yeah.
it was hysterical to me how evil that character was. It's like a home run off him. It gets us to be a sweet movie. The Chet Stedman character, it's probably my favorite Gary Busey role. This was like before he got like really crazy. um and yeah, it's just fun. It's fun and innocent and stupid in the best way.
Right. No, I agree. My favorite line, I find it hilarious when the owner is buying a hot dog and he's like $3 for a hot dog. That
Yeah.
I would kill for $3 hot dogs at Wrigley Field right
Well, and there, I
now.
mean, that's yeah. I like the '90s feel of this movie, and like even like these three young kids going on the L by themselves to like go to the game, and like just like it just I don't know. It's a more bygone era, right? Like
Yeah.
it felt good, but yeah, I know like some of these like right $3 for a hot dog, I'd kill for that right now.
Right. Seriously. And I also love when they're running through O'Hare, how O'Hare looks exactly the same.
The underground lights, it looks exactly the same.
Yeah, literally O'Hare has not changed at all since this
Yeah,
movie was made.
that
It's
was
it's
funny.
so funny to me. No,
Yeah,
it's a good movie. It's definitely not the best movie, especially from the ones we're going to be talking about during this segment. But I would give it, 3 3/4 to 4 Italian beefs out of 5, I'd say. Somewhere in there.
I'm gonna go like I'm gonna be generous and go with 3 Italian beefs out of 5. And I mean it probably raises half an Italian beef just because we're from Chicago and we like
Right.
the Chicago-ness of this movie. If we were not from Chicago, it'd probably be like a 2.5. Truthfully, it's more it was more silly and stupid than I remember. And
Yeah.
that's not always a bad thing. Also, I didn't catch that Neil Flynn was one of the Cubs players from Scrubs and from the middle. So
Yeah, I noticed that too.
when he had his first line, I was like, hey, it's the janitor.
Yeah, there's some low key like cameos in this movie that and you also see Barry
Oh,
Bonds,
yeah,
Bobby
Barry Bonds.
Bonilla,
Yeah.
and Pedro Guerrero. make very brief cameos in this movie, just literally just swinging and missing at a pitch.
Yeah.
And we also see a cameo from then Comiskey Park, which it
Well,
plays Dodger
they
Stadium.
filmed. I think you're right. Yeah. I think anytime they're away, it's at Comiskey. So that was cool. And boy, it's just anytime I see footage of what is now Rate Field from the '90s, the renovations that have been done over the past 26 years have been all for the better, because that was an ugly park when it first launched.
Yeah. It's still not great, but it is definitely
It
better
is
for
much
sure.
much better. It is much more inviting. It is. I mean, it's. I am a fan of it still. But boy, yeah, you see it back then, and it is like just this concrete blue monstrosity.
They really, man, they just got hit with bad timing on that one. If it was like a year or two later after Camden Yards opened, I feel like Rate Field would look a lot different than
Yeah,
it did back then.
it would. And listen, I'm thankful for the renovations, and it is one of my favorite places to go in the world still. But I do look forward to a new potential stadium.
Yeah, especially in the South Loop. That'll be really good.
Yes, but yeah, this was a very fun movie. I very much enjoyed it. Will I be watching it again anytime soon? Probably not. Outside of pure nostalgia. And yeah, it was a good time, but turn your brain off, because nothing really makes sense.
Yes, agreed. You have to just discard reality a little bit to watch this
Yeah.
movie and enjoy it. But no, it was good. So I think that'll do it for this episode. Obviously, thank you all for tuning in. We will be back next week with another episode of the Crosstown Baseball Podcast. Thinking we'll do a more serious movie this next time that relates to the White Sox, and we will watch Eight Men Out and review that.
We can't get any sillier, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's true. This one will be much more serious, but it is an excellent movie. So we look forward to reviewing that next week. So make sure to tune in. If you don't already, make sure to like, follow, subscribe on YouTube and Spotify, and make sure to give us a follow on Facebook and Instagram at Crosstown Baseball Podcast. If you want to reach out, ask questions, feel free. We would love to hear from some of our listeners. So again, thank you so much for tuning in. He's Matt Cannon. I'm Kevin Sullivan, and thank you again for tuning in. We will see you all next week here on the Crosstown Baseball Podcast. So long, everyone.